All right, guys. Good day, everyone. So in this session, we're going to look at Boolean values or Boolean variables in Kotlin programming language. So we have looked at strings, we have looked at numerical data. Now we're going to be taking a close look at the Boolean variable. Now, Boolean simply means true or false. That's what it means. Essentially, it carries those two values, either a true or a false statement. So, but there are ways that we can actually manipulate and make use of it in Kotlin, right? Which is quite similar to other object-oriented programming languages as well. So now to do that, to write our codes as usual, we create a new Kotlin file, and the name of the file, let's just call it boolean value.kt. Okay, so that's we have our file here. So and then the very first thing we want to do is to create the main function where we are going to run all our codes. Yeah. So as usual, to create a variable, we either use var or val. Like if you are not sure what var or val stands for, you can just go through to the previous video, and then you shouldn't have any question about that. So this is so we can explicitly define the value that will be stored as a boolean, just like we did with the other, and then we can set it to true. So let's use val again for the other one, for the next variable. I mean to say boolean, and let's set it to false. Yeah. So to create, and so these are, we have already assigned values to these guys. So this is a is true and b is false. So let's quickly print it out to confirm. Let's quickly run it. So we can either run it by right clicking on this, by using this, or by using the play button here. The play button has disappeared because it's still, you can see it's still working. So let's just wait, give it a few minutes. So while the code is running, so let me quickly show how to, we can create an empty boolean value. By now, ideally, there is a boolean value is not supposed to be empty. That is, we are supposed to have either true or false assigned to that boolean variable. But there's a way to actually there's a way around it. So how do we do that? Of course, we can either use var or val. So we can just create, and let's call this boolean empty boolean, right? So we set it to a boolean. Then we make it nullable. Sorry, boolean. Make it nullable by adding question mark. So question mark means that it's a nullable. Nullable means that that value can be null. That variable can be null, and then we set it to null. So that is how to create an empty. So you can see we have true here because a is true. So we can also do that for b, and then yeah, b. So let's just use this button. So what is on? So these are to create an empty boolean value. So now in the course of our code, we can assign a value to it. So in this case, it's null or empty. So then we can come down and change it. Yeah, empty boolean is equals to true, right? And then we print empty boolean, right? So that is it. Let's quickly run this. So while we're waiting, okay, you can see we have true. So is empty now, is no longer empty. In line 9, empty boolean is, sorry, yes, empty boolean is empty. In line 11, it is no longer empty because we have assigned true to it. Okay, so moving forward, now we can there are certain ways to get a boolean value, right? Now we don't necessarily need to explicitly define a boolean to get a boolean value in Kotlin and in other programming language. I think it's also the same thing in other programming languages as well. But we can get boolean from a boolean value from comparative using comparative operators or comparison operators. Now, what do I mean? For example, let's say we have two numbers. I like to use numbers because when we are using comparative operators, it's best to use numbers. So let's say x is equals to, let's just keep this, uh, what's it called? Let's just ignore the fact that we need to define the data type. Let's just set it directly to 10. So let's allow Kotlin to infer. So Kotlin will infer that this is, if you can recall from our previous tutorial, Kotlin has a way of inferring even when you do not specify the, for example, this, we can delete this and we can delete this and it will still be a Boolean variable because Kotlin is going to infer. So if we hover over this, you can see that it's a Boolean, right? Because Kotlin, when you set it to true, Kotlin knows that this is a Boolean value, so automatically it just, right. So now we are looking at how to get Boolean values from comparative operators. Let me quickly write that. Where's forward slash? Okay. How to get Boolean from comparison operators. Yeah, I think this spelling is wrong. Interestingly, I got it wrong the first time. I also got it wrong this time. That's very interesting. Okay, so five, right? So we can say print. I think we looked at this when we treated numbers. Print x is greater than y. So it's going to check. Or you know what? Instead of printing it directly, let's save it in a variable. Let's call it results is equal to. Let's make this a var. So we're going to have different values of results. X is greater than, sorry, y. Now we don't need to add any spacing, but let's just add it for, right. Okay, so let's print results. Print line results. Let's quickly run this guy. Okay, you can see it's true. Now if you put your cursor here, you are going to see that result is a boolean. Now we did not specify that result is a boolean directly, but indirectly Kotlin knows that it's a boolean because whenever you are using comparison operators, it always returns a boolean, right? It's either true or false. For example, is x greater, this is a question, right? Or this is a statement rather, x is greater than y is false because, okay, x is greater than y is true because x is 10, y is 5, right? So if we change it, if we come here and say result is equals to, that's why we are using var, so that we can actually change it. So we can say less than y. You understand? So we have changed the value of this, is the initial value of result, this is the current value. So let's print it. So it's going to return false. Now they are actually they are, I think they are four, they are about, okay, let me just list out the all of the comparison operators. Result is equals to, so we have looked at greater than, less than, so let's see less than or equal to, or it is greater than, less than or equal to y. Result is equals to x greater than or equal to, sorry, greater than greater than or equal to y. So this is less than or equal to, this greater than or equal to. We have, of course, I think we looked at this when we treated x is not equal to y and x is equal to y. So there are about one, two, three, four, five, six. There are six of them. This is greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, uh, not equal to, equal to. Good. So let's quickly check each of these results. So they will all return a boolean. So what I'm trying to prove is that comparison operators are actually always return a boolean value. Do you understand? But I suppose you understand. Okay, okay, I think we have looked at X. So let's just, to save time, let's just move the print statement to this, right? And comment this one out for now. Okay, so we want to check for this. That's the result of the code in line 23. That's X is greater than equal to Y is true. X is greater than equal to Y because X is 10. So let's take the print statement, let's cut it, and comment this and put it here. X is not equal to Y. That will be also, that will be true because they are not the same thing. Okay, then X is equal to Y will be false because X is not equal to Y. So let me quickly cut this. All right. So after this, I think we're done with comparison operators. Then we'll move to, okay. So that's about comparison operators. So let's look at um let's look at logic logical operators logical operators. Okay, so logical operators actually refers to and or, and a combination of, basically it's just and or, right? Now if you are accustomed to logic, particularly in mathematics, logic just simply means how the result of combining two or more statements, right? So for example, let's say, okay, we have A as true here and B, so let's just comment the rest of this. And so let's just comment everything, and let's pick this A and B. Let's take this one out, paste this here. Okay, so we have two values, A is true and B is false. But let's change it to T true, then F false. So we have truth and false, right? Let's save it in a variable called result. Let's save our result is equal to true and false, and sorry, what did I do? It's either this true and false. And let's save our result. True is equals to T, or, so I'm going to, so this is and, right? This is and. What this means is true and false. Yes. And this is true or false. Okay, you know what? I think it's best to look at each of them as in separately. So look at the and statement and the or statement. So let's take a close look at the and statement. Let me just and statement. Okay, now the rule about, now this is not just about Kotlin programming. This is mathematics generally. The rule of and is both statements must be true for us to have a result that is true. If any of the statement is false, the result will be false, right? So we have true and true will be true. Let's quickly take this one out. Then let's call this var result 2 is equals to true and true. So true and false. Let's copy this. We're going to format, our code is not looking well arranged. We're going to format it. So the next one will be false and true, and the next one will be false and false. Result 4, false and false, false and false will be. Okay, let's to format. If you recall from, so we'll go to code, then we'll go to format code. So that's how to properly arrange your code. So let's quickly print out all of these guys here. Result one. Let's call this result one. Result 1 to 4. Let's see the outcome. Print result one. Let's use print line so that everything is not lumped up in the same line. So let's print and result two. Let's print and result three. Print and result four. Okay, let's quickly run this and see what the result that we get. Okay, so you can see everything is false aside from the first one, that's true. So both statement has to be true for it to be true. You can see every other thing is false. That's the rule of and, right? So if you really want to understand this, you can look at logic in mathematics. So this is not just programming, it's mathematics generally. It's the laws of mathematics generally. So true and true is true, true and false is false, false and true is false, then false and false is false. Now the I think it's the exact opposite when we consider all statements. All statement, everything will be true unless both of them are false. That's when it will be false, right? So let's just quickly copy all of this. So now for all we use pipe, right? For and you can see we use double ampersand. This sign is called ampersand. But for all we use pipe, double pipe, right? So this sign is called a pipe, right? So, and we use two of it. Mm, two of it. We'll come here. Two of it. Let's quickly delete this. Okay, so we're having an error here because we're repeating the same. Yeah. So let's quickly print this and let's see what we got. So everything is true aside from the last one where both statements are false. So and that's the rule of or. If any one is true, the statement will eventually be true, right? It's just like saying um, Lagos is a large city or Lagos is in Nigeria, right? So if any of the statements, I'm sorry, I'm trying to, I've not been able to, come up with a very good illustration. But if any of the statements is true, the, the eventuality will be true, right? Or the result will be true. That's the rule of all. And so that's logical operators. And when we are dealing with logical operators, we are also working with Boolean values as well. So let's look at a practical scenario here. So now I want to show you how we can use Boolean values or Boolean variables in a function. Now we have not looked at function, we're going to look at function, but let's just create a simple when function. Right. Okay, let's just create one simple. Let's just say is logged in. So this is a boolean variable that will hold the this is a boolean variable that will hold the value of the state of a user, maybe in a site or a mobile app. Is the user logged in or not? So if the user is logged in, to be set to true. If it's not logged in, to be set to false. So we can now create a when statement and put yeah. Now I'll explain this when statement in future classes, but let's just is logged. So when is logged true, and then we use the arrow statement. Sorry, I'm going to say print. I'll explain what this code does in a minute. Let's just say print user is logged in. Yeah, when it's false, false, let's say print uh, please no user logged out. Okay, let me quickly comment all of these guys here so I don't have so many results in the console. So what this simply does is that it checks if the user, if this it checks the value of this log. So this is a practical case of how to use a boolean in a function. So this is a when function. You can see it has curved and curly braces. So it checks the value and then use makes use of the value to display either this or this. So in this case it's true. So this is saying that if this is true, if the value of is logged is true, then this is what we are going to have in the terminal. Let me change this to print line. Then if it's false, we are going to have this. So in this case it's true. So it's supposed to say the user is logged in. So let's quickly confirm that user is logged in, and then let's change it to false. Okay. User is logged out. So that's a classical example of how to use um, boolean in a function. So we can take it a step further. Let's look at numbers now. For example, a function that deals with numbers. So let's say when uh, let's create a variable called, let's say age is equals to 20. Let's use the when function, or we can take this out because we are not passing it directly. Okay, so this function can still work without the curved parentheses. So let's just specify a range. When if range is less than 13, so what are we going to do? We're going to say this person is a teenager. Print line, the user is no, is a child. It's not a teenager. Child is less than, it's a child. Let's say we are trying to integrate a functionality in our application that checks the age of a user and determines whether that content should be available to that user. So user is less than 13, child, there is a child. Um, so content blocked. Let's just put it that way. So if his age in 13 points dot 9, this is how we specify range. So we use this. You can see all we need to do is to type 13 dot then space 9. So Kotlin with automatically you can see the greater than less than. So that's how to, so and then we move to so we are saying if the user falls between this age, sorry, 19 not 9, then we can say it's a teenager. User is a teenager. User's discretion is, let's just put a message there. Or let's just say user is a teenager. Yeah. And then what else? We can say age is greater than or equal to, sorry, greater than or equal to. I think there's something wrong with my shift key. So 20, and so what will happen if the user is greater than 20? You can say means user is an adult. Okay, so anytime we have this yellow, we can quickly look at it and see it's meaning it's giving us, it's not an error, but it's telling us that there's something we need to do there. Okay. Okay, in this case, okay, it's telling us that this expression is not used because the age is greater than 20. So that's why. It's telling us that this will not be used at all because the user is 20 years and this as well. So, but we can still run it anyways. Sorry about that. Okay, user logged out. User is an adult. Okay, sorry, why is this saying user logged out? Because this is still working. So let's comment this out. User is an adult, so let's decrease it to 10. Size a chat, content blocked, let's say for T15. Oh, okay. I think there's an oh, okay. Sorry, I forgot to add the print statement. I was now wondering why this stuff is not. Okay, user is a teenager. So that's how to use, basically, how to use variables in Kotlin. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.